Welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at these Aomway cameras. I'm not sure that's how you say it, but it's spelled A-O-M-W-A-Y. We've got a couple here that we've got from HobbyKing, so a big thank you to those guys for supplying these cameras, and I want to take a look at them and show you how they perform, but also show you a little trick that they have up their sleeve. So what we'll do in this video is we'll talk about what you get in the individual boxes, and then we'll actually go out and connect it to an FPV transmitter, and we'll go and fly and show you what it looks like when it's actually in the air. So the first one we'll look at then is the smaller of the two boxes, and this is the one that this camera's come out of. So the specs on the camera are DC in is 4 to 5.5 volts, so it's a CMOS camera. It has a 2.8 colour lens, and it has a MOL or JST connector at the back. It's a 700 line camera, and it either comes in PAL or NTSC. Now in the actual box itself you obviously get the stuff we have in front of us. In addition to that, it comes in this little shiny box. You get a little manual that just really is giving you the specs, to be honest, rather than anything else, and you get two cables that plug in the back. So on the back of the cameras you'll notice that there are actually two different connections. One is the standard connector you'd expect to see on the back of a camera, and there's this other 3-pin connector here. Now I'll tell you what that's for in a second, but that's quite a cool feature that you can do with the cameras. Now to plug into this right hand port, the two cables that come with it, you have one cable that has kind of the same ends either end that you can plug in, or you could crop that and make it fit your own FPV transmitter. Then you've also got this, which for me is a boon. You can actually plug this straight into the back of the camera, and this is the way that I'm using these. And then that connector on the other end is the standard Fat Shark connector that clicks into their transmitters. So I am a big fan of the Fat Shark transmitters. I have an awful lot of them around, and now it means to connect the camera, all I need to do is connect it like that, and I'm ready to fly. So that is absolutely great. I don't need to mess about making up cables or get my soldering iron out. I can plug it straight into any immersion RC or any Fat Shark kit. So that's one camera, and this is one that we're actually going to install onto back onto one of my craft actually in a minute, and we'll go flying with it, and I'll show you what it looks like up in the air. Then there's also another version as well, and this is this slightly bigger box. It's the same camera, but it comes with an extra piece of equipment. So in this one, it has a slightly larger manual, but you'll see why in a second. You get the same kind of manual that we got with the camera, and then you actually get the equipment itself. So you get a little whip aerial, 5.8 gigahertz, and as we've talked about in our other videos, I'd never recommend you use a whip aerial like this apart from just testing things on the bench. You need a circular polarized antenna or something else for FPV flying, but it's nice that they include this in the box, because you should never power up a transmitter without actually having the antenna attached. Then we have a power cable which has a JST connector at the other end, which kind of gives you a clue that we're not just looking at a camera here, there's something else going on. And then you actually get the piece of kit in the middle, and here it is. And what we're actually looking at here is exactly the same camera that we were looking at before, but with an FPV transmitter snapped on the back. And on the back here you have the connections for the power and all the video out bits and pieces as well. So that JST lead plugs into the power connector, and now if we connect that to a battery, we have an all-in-one FPV system. The other nice thing about this is that the connector on the top is the right kind of connector for the Fat Shark style antennas. So if you have the antennas that have the pin in the middle, then they will fit beautifully, which for me is great again, because I have lots and lots and lots of those style of circular polarized antennas. I'll put some of the specs up here for the actual transmitter itself. You can go onto the HobbyKing website and see both of these. I'll put links in the description so that you can go and have a look and see exactly how these are priced and where you can get them from. So if we just go back to the desk, let me just show you how this is working. There's two little clips at the side. If I show you the other camera, you can kind of see the dents at the side that those clips are in. If I tease those clips open with a thumbnail and pull this camera off, there we go. We're actually looking at exactly the same camera as we had with our first look, but those three pins are actually connecting onto those three pins at the bottom of this little transmitter. Now you can see on the front it says it's a 5.8 gigahertz 200 milliwatt DC 6 to 28 volts, so you're going to be able to pretty much plug this into anything, although I'd recommend thinking about BECs or something else, because if you're going to run it at the top end of that range, it's going to be dissipating a lot of voltage. And the way it works is that those three pins just clip into the back of the camera, and then the camera snaps home. And there we have a little FPV setup. So we're not actually going to fly with this one. I have tested it. It works great with Fat Shark and other goggles too. What we'll do is we'll actually jump onto the craft. I'll put this other camera back on and we'll actually take it out for a flight and show you how it performs. So this first image here is actually captured in our Dominator HD goggles that we're using the DVR in. So the big image is the actual camera that we're looking at. The little insert is from the Mobius camera that we have above the main FPV camera on this craft, and I'll just put them side by side to give you an idea of the difference. Now, one of the things you'll notice immediately is the way that the different cameras are handling the contrast and the light. And I say the Mobius here is making it look a little bit more lush than it is. This is a January afternoon in the UK. The sun is very low in the sky, which for a lot of cameras will cause a bit of a problem in terms of managing the exposure. I would say that the Aomway camera is undercooking the exposure a little bit. It's looking a little bit washed out, and it's slightly overexposing the image, so the sky is a lot bluer than it appears here. And when we turn around and start flying towards the sun, you'll notice that that slight overexposure results in the sky blowing out completely, and us also losing a little bit of detail in the ground and that contrast that we might need to see where we're going. So I would say that this is a camera that's going to be fantastic for those places where you are flying in the summer. But for examples like this where the sun is really low in the sky, it is causing a bit of a problem flying back to the home position. So now we've had a look at that and we've seen how it performs in the air, let's go back to the bench and I'll give you my final thoughts after flying this for a little while. So there are a couple of things I do like about these cameras. I think they give quite a lot of bang for the buck. They are cheap and cheerful. We can pay an awful lot more for FPV cameras, particularly something like a 700 TVL version. The way they perform is pretty good. We saw that in some very challenging conditions in the video that we've just looked at, probably the hardest environment for this camera to cope with, and although it was flying direct into sunshine, it was still able to produce an image, and we were still able to kind of see where we were going. As soon as we turned away from that bright light, then the problems that we're having kind of went away. It does appear to overexpose the image a little bit and undersaturate it too, but that probably is going to be useful if you're flying in lower light conditions where maybe you're FPV flying through trees and you want a little bit of a lighter image so that you don't get all of the detail disappearing in the shadows as you're zooming around. The package with the FPV transmitter is a stroke of genius. I really like the idea that this little thing clips on the back of the camera. For a little bit of additional weight and size, you get a full FPV kit. Shame it can't be switched to 25 milliwatts. It's set at 200, and for those of us who live in places where 25 milliwatts is the legal limit, then that is tricky to use. But for those of you that are lucky enough to live in places where you can get away with a 200 milliwatt transmitter, this works really nicely. And again, because it's only 3 pins that are connected, it would be easy to create a little cable to even lie this back piece down so that you could have a very low profile setup if you were putting on something like a 180 class FPV racer as well. For me, now I've been flying them for a little bit, I'm not going to be replacing my Fat Shark cameras with these, but then I didn't expect to. The Fat Shark cameras are significantly more expensive than these units we're looking at here. The way I'm going to be using these cameras not this one, but this is going on a 180 class racer, but the way I'm going to use the other one is actually use it with something like this. This is a 3-channel video switcher and allows you, using your remote control radio, to actually switch between multiple cameras on a craft. And I've been looking for a camera that gives nice performance that I can actually have pointing down at the ground underneath some of the larger quads, and I can flick to that when I'm coming into land, and then when I'm descending in FPV, it'll stop me wandering around as much, and this will be absolutely brilliant for that. So I'm going to be using these as my second auxiliary cameras for things like that, but also potentially to have backward views and views over the wings as well, and use something like this. If you're interested in this FPV 3-channel video switcher, I'll link here to the video that where we actually looked at this and set it up. So hopefully that helps those of you that are looking at these cameras on HobbyKing. I would say if you're looking for a cheap and cheerful camera that will work well and also directly plug into a Fat Shark or Immersion RC transmitter, these are definitely worth a look. Or they have this version here, which allows you in one package to have everything you need to get flying, so long as you can cope with the 200 milliwatts. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.